Charlie was sleeping really sound. He was just so tired from the day before, and all of a sudden he heard somebody go, "Psst, Charlie." He thought, who is that? Where am I? What is this? And again he heard, "Psst, Charlie." He looked up. Here was Red leaning down, looking down at him. "Oh, that's right. I'm at camp," said Charlie. Red said, "Come on, let's get up. It's early, but we'll be really quiet." So they get up, got dressed, went to the wash house. And just as they were going into the wash house, sure enough, there was Mike and his friends. They were up there already. Mike says, "Well, well, well, look who's here. Sunday school Charlie. Hey, Charlie, you got your pin on this morning. You've got the keys on the belt. Did you sleep with those last night?" Charlie, he just sort of got angry on the inside. He just started to tense up. He thought, no, I can't do that. I have to be nice to Mike. But Red spoke up right away. He says, "Leave him alone. It's none of your business if he goes to Sunday school. So what?" Boy, Red was really upset. He started talking back to Mike, and Mike sort of looked at Red. Red looked at Mike, and Charlie thought, oh no, I don't want any trouble. Mike just turned, walked out the door, didn't say anything. Later that morning, they went to Bible class, and in Bible class, Mr. Hunt took out his Bible and said, we're going to talk about a young man in the Bible today. We find him in Genesis chapter 37, and there are several chapters dealing with him, and this young man is Joseph. Joseph was a brother of many in the family, and Joseph had many, many brothers, and he was young, and his dad made him a very beautiful coat. But his brothers were jealous because they worked with their father. They were the shepherds. They took the sheep from pasture to pasture. They were sleeping outside with the sheep and guarding the sheep, and Joseph was still working at home. His dad made him this beautiful coat, many colors, and the boys were jealous. In fact, they just were so jealous, they started to hate him because he had this beautiful coat. One day, Joseph's dad said, Joseph, I want you to go out and check on your brothers. Here's some things, take some things with you for them. I want you to go out and check on them just to see how they're doing. Well, Joseph went looking where he thought they might be, and he had to ask along the way, have you seen shepherds with the sheep? And finally he found out where they were, and as he was coming at a distance, his brothers looked up and saw him coming, and they just had such hatred for him. No reason other than the coat. So they looked, they saw him. One of them says, well, let's just kill him. We'll get him out of the way. We'll never have to worry about him again. But Reuben, the older brother, spoke up. He says, no, 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 no. He says, we can't do that. He says, why don't we just take him over and put him in one of these pits over here. There's no water in it, but it's deep enough he can't get out. Let's just put him in there, and then we'll decide what we're going to do with him. Well, they did that. They took off his coat, put him down in the pit, and after a while they looked up, and here came some Ishmaelites. Here came a caravan, camel caravan coming across. One of the brothers says, hey, let's sell him. Oh, okay, that's a good idea. Yeah, that'll give us some money. We'll be rid of him. they can take him somewhere else and sell him if they want to. Sell him as a slave. Well, that's what happened. They sold their brother. Then they took the brother's coat, Joseph's coat, put some blood on it, took it back to Dad and said, "Oh, we found a coat. Animal must have gotten him." But Joseph, the Bible tells us, it picks up his story in Genesis chapter 37. And we find that as we go over to Genesis chapter 39, in Genesis chapter 39, we find Joseph coming into Egypt. In Genesis 39 verse 1, it says, "And Joseph was brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him of the hands of the Ishmaelites, which had brought him down." When these Ishmaelites came to Egypt, they made a deal with Potiphar. Of course, you can believe that they got more money from Potiphar than what they paid for Joseph from his brothers. And something we notice, first of all, he was betrayed by his brothers. He was betrayed. He is betrayed and brought down to Egypt. When he is sold in Egypt, in verse 2 of Genesis 39, it says, "And the Lord was with Joseph." Joseph probably thought, "God, where are you? God, I believe in you. God, why is this happening to me?" But Joseph, and the Lord was with Joseph, and Joseph was a prosperous man, and he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. The Lord was with him. The Lord helped him. He became prosperous. His master began to trust him, give him more responsibilities. And then one day, we find that his master, Potiphar, had a wife, and one day she lied about Joseph. And when she lied about Joseph, Potiphar said, "No, Joseph can't be that way. I'm going to throw him into prison." Wow. Joseph was betrayed by his brothers. Now he is blamed by his master's wife, and now he's thrown into prison. It really doesn't, when you think about it, he was thrown into the pit. He is a captive of the Ishmaelites, and now he's in prison again. But later in chapter 39, again, verse 21, at the beginning of the chapter, it said the Lord was with Joseph. Here at the end, in Genesis 39:21, "But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him mercy and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison." Joseph is betrayed. God is with him. Joseph is blamed falsely, but God is with him. And now we find when Joseph is in prison, he is given a lot of responsibilities. It ends up that while he's in prison, he's called in to interpret a dream for the king. And he told the king, he said, "Well, according to what you're dreaming, there's going to be 7 years of overabundance of food. You're going to have so much food, the crops are going to be so good You don't know what to do with it all. But at the end of those 7 years, then there's going to be 7 years of famine. The crops aren't going to grow right. You're going to be wanting food. Joseph said, I tell you what you do, Pharaoh. You build storehouses, and during the 7 years, when you have so much extra food, what you do is collect it and put it into those storehouses. Then, when that 7 years of famine comes, you can take that food out of those storehouses and your people will have enough to eat. Pharaoh thought that was a good idea. And so we find that Pharaoh put him right up there, almost next to himself, as a ruler in the land. Joseph is in charge of all this. And then one day his brothers showed up. It would have been over 7 years later because of the 7 good years. Now they don't have enough food. It could have even been longer than 7 years. They don't have enough food. They come to Egypt. They didn't even recognize their brother. He would be dressed in Egyptian clothes. After being there for at least 7 years or more, he would be speaking their language. And so just his appearance, it did not look like the brother that they knew. And then when they knew him, he was a young man. Now he's grown older, he's matured. They did not recognize him. But Joseph gave them food, and then eventually they brought the family down to Egypt to live with Joseph. And that's how the children of Israel ended up in that land of Egypt. But it's interesting because Joseph was not mad at his brothers for doing that, because in Genesis 45 and verse 8, Joseph said, when he's talking to his brothers, it wasn't you that sent me here, but God. In other words, he gave God the credit. He gave God the glory for those rough times because God brought him down there so that he could help provide food for his own family. And then in chapter 50, in verse 20, it says, but as for you, he's talking to his brothers, as for you, you thought evil against me, but God meant it unto good, to bring to pass, as it is this day, to save much people alive. So, Joseph was, what? He was betrayed by his brothers, but the Lord was with him. Number 2, he was what? Blamed falsely by his master's wife, put into prison, but the Lord was with him. And then finally, the last B, he was blessed of God for being faithful to God. What a blessing to see what happened in the life of Joseph. God did not leave him. God was with him all of those years to prepare him for what he wanted him to be. Charlie really got a lot out of that lesson. He was thankful for that lesson, and so as Charlie was going about his routine, later on that day, they went swimming, they went boating, did all the fun things. And then it was mealtime, and they started to the dining hall. As they were going to the dining hall, Mike came rushing by as if he was upset or in a hurry or something. And as Mike ran past Red and Charlie. All of a sudden he sort of stopped, backed up, looked down, sort of glanced around, reached down, picked something up, and real quickly he put it in his pocket. Took right off running again. Just as he started to run again, Red called out after him, "Hey, Mike, what was that? What did you find? What you put in your pocket?" Mike sort of yelled back over his shoulder, "None of your business." Just kept right on going. That night they had their evening service, went back to the cabin after the evening service. And back at the cabin, Uncle Jeff said, "Boys, I have an announcement, I guess you'd call it, to make." He said, "We got word this evening that the registrar was walking from the office down to the dining hall, and somewhere along that way she lost the gold key that goes to the money box to the treasure chest." He said, and she thinks she had it, she knows she put it in her sweater pocket, but she thinks she might have lost it somewhere on the way down. And we just want you boys to know, if you find it, or if you know anybody that finds it, we are going to offer a reward. If anybody can find it, if anyone can get it back, because we don't want to have to destroy that box in order to get the money out to pay for our things for camp. As Uncle Jeff started talking about that, all of a sudden Charlie looked over to Red. Just looked at him. And just about that time, Red turned and looked at Charlie. They were thinking the same thing. Is Mike the one that found the key? What did Mike pick up when he reached down? As they were thinking about that, Uncle Jeff sort of picked up on it. They were looking at each other. Uncle Jeff says, "Charlie, do you know anything about that key?" "No, sir. I'm sure I don't know for sure about that key." "I don't know anything for sure about that key." "Okay," said Uncle Jeff, "if you do, I want you to tell me." And Charlie didn't say anything. So they went to bed that night, and next day, boys are sitting together in crafts. And in crafts, Red says, "Charlie, you said you didn't know anything about that key." "No," said Charlie. "I said I didn't know anything for sure about that key." Red, did you see Red, did you see Mike actually pick up a key? Red says, "No, he just picked something up and stuck it in his pocket." Charlie said, "I didn't see what it was. You didn't see what it was, so we don't know for sure that it was the key." "Okay," said Red. Red says, "We've got to find that key." He says, we ought to check Mike's pants pocket, see if he has the key." Charlie says, "What?" "Yeah, we just walk up to Charlie and say, or walk up to Mike and say, 'Hey, Mike, empty out your pockets. We want to see if you have the gold key.'" Red says, "No," he says, "I didn't mean it that way." He said, "I've been thinking, what we should do is wait till late tonight after dark. Then we should sneak in to Livingston Lodge, and we should look in Mike's pants after everybody's asleep just to see if he does have the key." Charlie is just, this is unbelievable. He can't believe what he's hearing. He said, "Red, How do you even know which bed is his? Oh, that's easy, said Red. I asked a boy in his cabin today. He said that Mike sleeps right inside the door. He said he just pulls his pants off and lays them by the bed and crawls into bed at night. He says, that'll be easy. Charlie says, what do you mean it'll be easy? Yeah, he says, everybody will be asleep. We won't wake anybody up in our cabin. We won't wake anybody up in their cabin. It's gonna be simple. We'll just go in, check his pants. If he doesn't have it, hey, no problem. If he does have it, then we'll be able to turn it back in. Charlie says, I can't believe what I'm hearing. What if we get caught? And that's where we stop for this lesson. To be continued.